From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
It's known as the Bluegrass State, but why is that? Our tour of the Ag States of America takes us to Kentucky for the answer. Harvest delayed.
This should have been the beginning of the harvest season.
What flooding in California could mean for producers and consumers. And concern about the nation's banks.
I'm reluctant to say failure, but it sure could make it very tough out there for regional and even national banks.
Is your money safe? We ask the experts right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. A new snapshot of the rural financial picture shows economic conditions may be slumping. A just released Creighton University Rural Main Street Index fell below growth neutral for the first time since October of last year. The survey of rural bankers falling to 45.6, that's down 4.5 points from just last month. Now, the economist behind the survey, Ernie Goss, saying that the rural Main Street economy continues to experience slow to no to negative growth. He points to the slowing economy, higher borrowing costs, and labor shortages for part of the decline. And now it's the banks themselves that many people are watching after several high-profile banks collapsed in the past week. AgDay's Michelle Rook looking into what this means for the banks producers rely on. Michelle.
Clinton Dr. Ernie Goss tells me because of the timing of their survey, some ag bankers responded before the bank defaults started to expand. However, he is confident the current banking situation is not like the financial crisis in 2008-2009. Those meltdowns were caused by the loss in value of mortgage-backed securities. And today, after Dodd-Frank legislation, bank regulations have tightened. Plus, most banks in rural America and large farming areas are less susceptible because they have less risky depositors. Goss also points out the farming community was in pretty solid financial condition going into the recent series of interest rate hikes by the Fed. Yet, he says it still bears watching as some banks invest in bonds which have decreased in value while interest rates have climbed, and there is some nervousness among larger depositors.
So that you could have some businesses, manufacturers, farmers feeling that fear, and you begin withdrawing your deposits at these banks, and that could push some. I'm reluctant to say failure, but it sure could make it very tough out there for regional and even national banks.
Other ag bankers tell us they're not concerned about a large-scale crisis and agree banks in rural areas should be more insulated than Silicon Valley Bank and the like.
Because these banks were so heavily concentrated in just one or two industries, I believe this is not a systemic risk like 2008, 2009. That said, certainly in a rising interest rate environment, there are new risks that banks need to manage. And I'm confident the vast majority of community banks and well-managed diversified banks will be just fine.
Goss says in their survey of bankers as part of the Rural Main Street Index, only 13.6% tightened credit standards for farm loans in the last year in the face of rising interest rates, but he expects that will change substantially. Goss also says in their survey about a third of the bankers recommended an interest rate hike of 50 basis points in next week's Fed meeting, but he thinks the likelihood is much lower now. In fact, he expects only a quarter point or no rate increase at all.
Another developing story we're following right now. Fruit farmers in the Midwest and Tennessee River Valley are keeping a close eye on the temperatures with a cold front coming. Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joins us. And Andrew, some of those fruit trees are already in bloom.
And really the cause for this cold is all thanks to this cold front here associated with this lower pressure system. It'll be moving through the Midwest Great Lakes states as we round out this Friday, and this is going to continue to track its way eastward. And as it does, that's going to spark some severe weather across the deep south and even thunderstorms all the way up into the Carolinas. Eventually this works off the eastern coast here by the start of the weekend for Saturday, but behind it, it's going to usher in some much chillier air, some Arctic cold heading towards the Great Lakes states, so we're going to be watching some sub-zero wind chills and even the potential of some light snow. Here's a look at that feel-like wind chill temperature this morning. You can definitely tell that cold front 6 below in Minneapolis for the feel-like temperature, meanwhile feeling like the 50s down across parts of the deep south. Here's a look at tomorrow morning's feel-like temperature. Check out this for Saturday morning. Lots of northern states here going to feel like sub-zero temperatures to kick off the weekend. Definitely a chill in the air. I think someone needs to go find the groundhog and hold them responsible here for this brief return to winter weather. And it seems like some of our pets are growing tired of the wild weather. Leslie Wells of Indianapolis sharing her dog's reaction to a recent round of grapple falling. You can see she wants to go outside, but is a little unsure. Leslie says she eventually manages to go out and chase the birds and squirrels. I'll more on your AgDay forecast in just a few.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Now, California right now is dealing with an ongoing devastation from several rounds of heavy rain, with many of the state's key growing areas impacted by flooding. As Shelley Malashi reports, it's delaying the harvest of essential crops.
A devastating blow to our nation's top crop producer. The recent back-to-back storms hitting California's critical agricultural regions may also impact the U.S. food supply.
The pain is going to be prolonged for many weeks and months. This should have been the beginning of the harvest season.
The relentless rain is flooding crops, evacuating farm worker communities, and delaying the harvest season. California is the golden state of food production. It produces the majority of some specialty crops, like certain fruits and vegetables in the country.
In January's storm events, we had over 15,000 acres that were impacted by flooding and inundation, with over $330 million worth of farm losses.
Ag officials in hard-hit Monterey County say it's unclear when planting schedules will resume, and all the flooded farms and delayed harvests could lead to higher costs for consumers nationwide. That's if supplies tighten and produce distributors turn to Mexico or other regions to make up for shortages and then pass on the added cost to consumers. Ag officials say it's too early to fully assess the damage, but are working to mitigate the long-term impact.
There will be more crop losses as areas that have not experienced flooding now are now experiencing it for the first time.
In Monterey County, the severe weather has forced farm workers out of their homes and left them without jobs.
This community of Pajaro is mostly low-income Latino farm workers, and this is the worst thing that could have happened to them right now.
And we're hearing specifically from the California Strawberry Commission about flooding along the Salinas River in California. It says it is already estimating hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. Officials report fields were just weeks away from being harvested, and they say thousands of people are displaced in the town of Pajaro. The commission says the state's strawberry operations, most of which are multi-generational and family-owned, will remain vital to the damaged areas during the recovery and well beyond. Some ag organizations say they're disappointed with the now approved merger between Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern, while others hope it will increase marketing opportunities. Now, the deal, worth $31 billion, will go into effect the middle of next month. It would create the first freight rail network linking Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. The new railroad says the merger will help the environment by taking as many as 60,000 trucks off the roads each year, while the U.S. Wheat Associates and the National Association of Wheat Growers are among those disappointed, saying the deal was given the green light without regard for the consequences to ag shippers from a lack of competition in U.S. rail. Cattle and corn follow the market higher on Thursday. We'll dig into the markets next in analysis. And later, take a tour of the bluegrass state with social media funny man Charlie Barretts as he shows us what ag products define Kentucky in the country.
AgDay is sponsored by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels, perfected in conventional, excels in no-till. Order 12 to 16 rows today and qualify for free shipping or 20% off an end zone moisture management package.
China was back buying more U.S. old crop corn on Thursday, 25.2 million more bushels, representing the third big buy this week. And that continues to keep corn in the green, as Michelle Rook tells us in Markets Now.
Mixed closes in Thursday in grain and livestock futures trade. Risk management commodities. Chuck Shelby is joining us. And we did have outside markets kind of stabilize on Thursday, Chuck, so that helped out parts of the commodities sector. Do you think we've kind of run our course in terms of the fear with the banking situation?
It seems to have subsided, and markets did stabilize. We saw the bean market make a big plunge early, but came back pretty nicely. And obviously the elephant in the room would be China and their 3-day purchases. they think the price is right, and I think that's a very important positive going forward.
Yeah, do you think that the corn market would have seen this kind of recovery without help from the China business, or were you disappointed we didn't see a bigger recovery because of it?
Well, I think considering that the funds were liquidating so much and negativity that surrounded the outside markets, I think it's a positive to see the corn close in good positive territory. We repelled out of some lows we needed to. Bull spreads are working, which is always a good sign. And if China comes around and buys some more, I think going forward in the USDA reports, remember they dropped exports pretty dramatically. We sold about 80 million bushel in 3 days. So that's a pretty big number going forward. Some more of that. Maybe we can build on this and work higher into the end of March and first part of April.
Yeah, you would think USDA might have to make some export adjustments going forward. Because of the bull spreads working like you talked about here on Thursday, do you think we're likely that there is more export sales that are going to be announced?
Well, I think it's a two-part story. I think the exports will come around and we'll see some more of that. But farmer selling has really dried up here. So farmers have stopped selling. I think another component of that is we're going to get into fields here hopefully in a month or so. And so farmers traditionally don't like to move grain once they're into the planting season. So a couple of positives going forward. Maybe we can build on it from here. It's certainly been a massive break, and it takes a little bit of time to build confidence in markets so that we can resume an uptrend.
Okay, let's hope that happens. Thanks so much for joining us, Chuck Shelby with Risk Management Commodities. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
The 2023 Bracket Busters Challenge, presented by Case IH, is underway. Who's still in the game? To find out, head to AgWeb now through April 3rd to check the leaderboard.
Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joining us here, taking a look at our national forecast, starting with what could be some severe weather there in the southern part of the country, and then cold.
Yeah, this is all associated with that big cold front that we showed you during crop comments. And as we take a look at the severe storm threat here on this Friday, we're going to have to watch the deep south here for a few isolated tornadoes, damaging hail, damaging wind, and heavy rainfall. And once these storms move out, it's going to get cold. And again, this deep south severe weather is all thanks to a larger cold front that'll be working their way through here, kind of the plain states as well as the Midwestern and Great Lakes states. And we really don't need more moisture off across the deep south. Here's a look at the latest root zone map here for this week. And again, those blues are meaning the soils are pretty saturated across parts of the deep south, parts of the Tennessee River Valley. And again, where that atmospheric river has been set up down across California, parts of the western coastline there, really been inundated with several rounds of precipitation, erasing much of the drought conditions over the past 3 months for California. Taking a look at the precipitation here for the rest of this week, heading on into parts of next week, where once again, where those blues were showing up on the root zone, are once again where the highest moisture chances are going to fall down across the Tennessee River Valley, as well as the deep south and off across the western coast. And there will be a wintry side behind that strong cold front that we showed you during Crop Watch. We're going to be watching several waves of snow, especially for parts of the Intermountain West. Here's another look at this cold front here as we go throughout Friday morning. Behind this front, we're going to see some pockets of some Arctic air breaking out, especially for the far northern states. And we'll see this cold front eventually lifting its way eastward here as we go on into Friday afternoon and evening, and even on into Saturday. And behind that, it's going to turn cold here across the Great Lakes states, where we could be looking at some wind chill values sub-zero here as we go ahead and kick off the weekend. Here's a look at the high temperatures for this afternoon. Check out that 10 in Bismarck. That's the cold air outbreak that's going to begin to funnel its way southward into the Great Lakes and even down across the deep south. And as we head on into tomorrow morning, we'll really see that starting to take shape here across the northern states. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at your AgDay select cities. Ham Lake, Minnesota, blustery with a few snow chances. Highs getting up into the upper teens. Going over to Charlotte, North Carolina, showers with falling high temperatures, high 55 degrees. And going up to northwest Nevada, sunny, high near 40.
Oil prices dropping to their lowest point in more than a year this week. On Wednesday, prices slumped nearly 6%, with international benchmark Brent crude also dropping to its lowest point since December of 2021 before bouncing back on Thursday. Market watchers say it's due to uneasiness over the banking system. The U.S. Energy Information Administration also reporting crude oil inventories right now are 7% above the 5-year seasonal average. A new partnership is being formed to meet the growing demand for lower carbon renewable fuels. Corteva, Bunge, and Chevron teaming up to introduce winter canola hybrids that will produce plant-based oil with a lower carbon profile. The companies say the goal is to increase the availability of vegetable oil feedstocks, primarily for renewable fuels. The companies report they plan to introduce the new crop to the southern U.S., and they say the winter canola hybrids from Corteva can be used in a double crop system following soybeans or cotton. Up next, bourbon and fast horses aren't the only legacy of Kentucky agriculture. We'll get a tour of another Ag States of America from social media's Charlie Barron's in the country.
The 2023 Bracket Busters Challenge, presented by Case IH, is underway. Who's still in the game? To find out, head to AgWeb now through April 3rd to check the leaderboard. In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
As we continue our tour of the Ag States of America, today we're talking about the state that's home to bourbon, fast horses, and mint juleps. Charlie Barron's has more on Kentucky, the bluegrass state.
So why is Kentucky named the bluegrass state when the grass is green? Now some say it's because the early settlers saw a bluish tint in the Kentucky pastures. Maybe they did, maybe it was the booze. Either way, the name stuck. Bluegrass is actually a species of grass that's ideal for grazing and is found in many of the pastures across the state. Now you're probably wondering, why are pastures so important to Kentuckians? Well, it's because the state's deep appreciation for all things horses. Kentucky is the nation's leading producer of horses, including everything from mules to ponies to purebreds and thoroughbreds. And of course, we can't forget about the Kentucky Derby, the annual horse race in Louisville that takes place on the first Saturday in May and is dubbed the Run for the Roses. It's a beautiful day. A day the entire country gets a pass on wearing seersuckers and floppy hats with flowers, sometimes wearing them together. When the steeds aren't racing, visitors can tour farms and admire these four-legged athletes and maybe get a hot tip for the Preakness or the Belmont Stakes. And rumor has it those horses even take bribes in the form of carrots and apples. So bring your groceries. And while horses are number one, coming in at a close second are beef cattle. Kentucky raises more beef cattle than any other state east of the Mississippi. And of course, we can't forget about pigs, chickens, goats, and sheep. Speaking of sheep, did you know that in Western Kentucky, the traditional meat of pitmasters and barbecue lovers is mutton? Now, allow me to clarify, the meat, not the bad beard. With techniques perfected over time and served with a dipping sauce of vinegar and hot peppers, this famous barbecue tradition was born. The state also grows plenty of wheat, soybeans, and corn. It's also important to note that Kentucky is a major player in growing oak trees for lumber. So now let's discuss how corn and lumber relate. And to do that, we gotta talk about bourbon. See, now I piqued your interest. Kentucky produces 95% of the world's supply of bourbon whiskey. In fact, there are more barrels of bourbon being aged in Kentucky than the state has people. As of 2019, that number surged to double the population with more than 9 million barrels in total. That is a 2-to-1 ratio in favor of hooch, which is the kind of math I can get behind. For a whiskey to be considered a bourbon, though, it has to be made with at least 51% corn and can only be aged in a brand new charred oak barrel. So to be the best bourbon in the world, you need Kentucky, at least according to my extensive research on the issue. Now, Kentucky sits on a bed of blue limestone that allows water to flow through and collect minerals that add personality and flavor to the water. Kentucky also has unique weather extremes. It's very hot in the summer, very cold in the winter, which is perfect for bourbon production. When the barrels expand, the whiskey seeps in and absorbs the properties of the charred wood. Then when the temperatures are cold, the barrel contracts and the whiskey is pushed out of the wood, adding flavor and a golden color. You know, I'm not sure why they didn't just teach science in terms of bourbon, but I think I finally understand chemistry. But what about all the used barrels? Well, Kentucky exports them around the world for the production of other spirits like Canadian Scotch, Irish whiskey, Mexican tequila, and even French wine.
All right, thanks, Charlie. And you can watch more of these state-by-state features at pivotbio.com/originals. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. We're all of us here at AgDay. I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a good day.